final project. I want to use the second part to show the working version of the Luigi Pset. So first, let's start with everything related to the pool of the API and the creation, insertion, extraction from data from the API, and then insertion of data in the database. So how this should work? Like, you should end up with a folder like this called daily prices. This is all controlled by this task called in Backbone, right? The first task is like Coinbase get candles for hours. So what this task does is that it connects to Coinbase. It uses the API. It downloads the data and then save it in a CSV file with each of the columns. Then the second task is read from these files, and then I read from these files and save them with the format that it requires, so it can be read from the database. I use the code that it's suggested by Luigi to insert into a database. So that's why I create another input-output file called transformer. And by last, I use the class copy to table from Luigi, where I read these transformed files that are here, right? And then I just insert them into the table. The interesting thing here is this update ID. This update ID, I use the name of the table, that in this case is each cryptocurrency. For example, in this case, Bitcoin USD or Ethereum USD, and add the time that this was updated. And by last, I have a grabber task that those all update database prices, right? And the update database prices, it requires the read Coinbase var file. That is the tasks that transform the prices, and this one as well requires the one that calls the API. So this is my ETL from Luigi. Now the second interesting problem that I created is the logical task. So what's the task that we have? So in this example, our logical task is just to create a PDF. Okay, so sorry, a PDF. It's just to create a data frame and pass the value of that data frame. So this is the task that we want to have logical, right? And to have this logical task, we created a process task, right? A process task that uses this logical target. So how this thing works? So we're gonna use a new task, and the new task is going to do two things. If we pass a parameter of 1, okay, then the logical task is just going to persist our data frame to disk. However, if we pass 0, right, the logical task is going to print, okay, it's going to print the output of the requirement that is a create data frame. So the interesting thing here is, if you look, there is no an input and output process, right, from this task to the other one. Usually when we use Luigi, this task should have a target, a CSV file or whatever, and then this requires should have read from that file. But as you can see in this case, this doesn't happen. It takes directly the data frame created by this task. How do I achieve this? Well, if you look at this created data frame is a child class of the process task, and what we are editing here is just the process, right? That the process returns our data frame. And how does the process task looks? Well, first of all, it has no run nor process, because this will be defined. And then we also have the parameter of what we want it to do, right? Because imagine that we want probably to debug and we want to persist the results, or maybe we just want to pass them. So if the parameter is 1, it will behave like a normal task and will persist to disk. But otherwise, it will return this logical target, right? And then this logical target, what actually only does, it passes a callable, right, it passes a callable that is the process callable that in this case it's called here. So if we execute this task, like we can see here, if we execute this task, let's just make it as a parameter of 0, right? So if the parameter is 0, we have the callable. So if we execute this task, okay, we can see that the data frame was print, right? The data frame was print here, right? Now, if we change to 1, then it means it should persist to disk, right? It should persist to disk, but it shouldn't print this data frame. So let's try it. It runs successfully again, and soon I should see here it is. Take some time. Right, so I mean, for me this is very interesting because it helps me to break my code into more specific tasks and get the full functionality of Luigi, right? If I need to do a big analysis and reading some data, and then I want to take this data and do also analysis, and I want to measure how long it takes to do each of each one, I don't want necessarily to persist them to disk, right? So I can use all the event handlers from Luigi. I can do something if some data transformation happens correctly or if it doesn't. So I mean, I think it's an interesting thing to explore. Well, that's all. If you have any questions, please, you have my email, and let me know.